Hello and welcome to our podcast, The Doula and The Doc, hosted by Vanessa Salerno, a birth and postpartum doula.
As well as Dr. Joseph Scroy, an obstetrician, gynecologist and fertility specialist.
Together we'll be discussing a range of topics from preconception, pregnancy, birth and also the postpartum period.
Together we combine holistic insights and medical expertise. We dive into women's and men's health with honest information and sometimes the unexpected conversations.
This podcast is where evidence meets experience, so let's start the conversation. Please note the information provided in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. Always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional regarding your own pregnancy, birth and health-related conditions.
This season of The Doula and The Doc is brought to you by Libra.
Welcome to the Libra Odd Spot.
Yes, if anyone knows when you are in the bathroom and you are taking out your pad, we have odd spots and we love to sit and read while we're in the bathroom.
So stop scrolling and start reading.
Rubber bands last longer when refrigerated.
Very small clouds are called scuds.
Let's turn the lights down low, have a husky voice and talk about sex. I've actually got a really husky voice, but that's from the footy.
Okay, yeah. Not just on the podcast.
So welcome to Doula and the Doc.
Thank you. Thanks so much for
So
having
we've
me.
joined by Laura Miano, who's a general sex therapist looking after all couples. But tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you look after and who you see.
Yes, so I am a sex therapist. I run my own practice called Miano Clinical Sexology. And I really like to treat a broad range of sexual concerns, starting from kind of more general things like a lack of pleasure during sex, sexual anxiety, going through to more technical kind of issues when it comes to sex, maybe like erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, vaginismus, which is like a sexual pain, low desire. But I really love working with pleasure and promoting pleasure and intimacy, and educating people on how to have more pleasurable sexual experiences.
Okay, so when I was 8 years of age, little boy, went to school, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor.
Yeah.
What makes someone go, you know what, I want to be a sex therapist? Yeah. How do you get exposed? You're surely not at 8 years of age you're thinking that. But no, what makes someone think that that's the path that they want to take?
Yeah, I think from an early age, I was always interested in science and especially psychology. And in high school, I really loved psychology. I was also very comfortable talking about sex, especially like amongst my friends. As you develop sexually as a young person, there's a lot of changes that happen. And I always found those changes really interesting and I wanted to talk about them with my friends. I was very keen to kind of learn about my own experience and about others. And I also really loved hip hop music when I was younger, and it's very sexual. And there was one particular song by Little Kim.
Oh, yeah.
And it was kind of the modern day Cardi B WAP song.
Yes.
And she talks in that song a lot about sexual empowerment for women. And I remember just from a really young age that just taught me a really good lesson about women's place in sex and pursuing pleasure, and that it's for all parties involved, not just more so for one. And I think from that point, I pursued psychology. But as I got a little bit further into it, I thought I'd really love to change direction and go to more of a sexology side. I just felt like it would, I felt a bit more passionate about helping people overcome sexual concerns and have more pleasurable sex. And so, when I took that path, it was a little bit of a hard path to begin with. I think telling friends and family that you want to be a sexologist can be a little bit challenging, but I think they could see how much I loved it and how passionate about it I was. And once I got into it, I studied so much and I put so much time into it. And even to this day, I've been doing it for 6 years now. I'm still as obsessed with it as I was when I first started.
From 6 years now, have you noticed there's such an interest for people to come and see you?
Absolutely, yes. I feel like I kind of got into sexology right at the start of the sexual wellness movement, where people were talking about sex more online, and there were a lot less sex educators online back then. And in the last 7 years, there's just been such a shift. And I still do have people contact me saying they didn't know sex therapy was a thing, but it's becoming more rare now. People are kind of well versed that sex therapy is a thing, that they can get help for sexual concerns.
So growing up as a young girl, I mean, we were talking about the fact that we're all Sicilian background.
Yep.
I mean, we were very suppressed, or certainly I was, in terms of talking about sex and stuff like that. In fact, I was just saying before that, about 16, I asked my parents if I could have a girlfriend. I was told no, study harder. So, I mean, what were your parents like as growing up as a kid? I mean, you talked about Little Kim before and all the music and stuff, but was it openly talked about at home?
It was talked about with my mum. My mum always kind of approached sex in a bit of a funny way. She would make little cheeky jokes about it, but it was always kind of behind closed doors, just with the girls. Yeah. And it was a safe space to kind of laugh about it and make light of it. With my dad, definitely not. Yeah. Definitely not. But I think, my mum really created a space that, just made it something that was okay to talk about, but just in privacy.
Yeah, fair enough.
We talked about it. My mum would talk about it. I'm one of 3 girls.
Yeah.
So we're all very different on how we would spend. Maybe I'm the youngest. So then by the time she was just like, I'll talk to you about it. Wouldn't talk about it with the eldest, but it was very open. And, I look at my older sister and she's like, I would never ask that to mum. She's like, you get away with everything. You can.
Younger kid does.
Yeah. And it's open, but we don't obviously go into depth. But if I needed to ask her a question, she was always there.
It makes such a difference.
It does. Yeah.
So in our practice, we see a lot of patients, preconceptionally from a fertility perspective, but in addition to that, obviously during pregnancy and then childbirth and the postpartum period. And we might break those sort of areas up a little bit.
Yeah.
What are the things that you see in terms of a young couple or a couple who are trying to become pregnant in terms of how they explore sex? Because I think sometimes sex becomes quite robotic. It's like, we've got to have sex because we want to get pregnant, right? Yeah. And that sense of it becoming a job. I see a lot of patients who come and see me and it's, it's like they're on the tools. It's like becomes hard work, doesn't it? So, how does a couple sort of spark up their relationship a little bit when it comes to, making love, not making a baby necessarily?
Yeah, it's really common when couples are trying to conceive that sex becomes very goal-directed, and it becomes all about getting to that final point of ejaculation, and especially if they're timing it around ovulation, there's just a lot of structure around sex, and sex can kind of become, I guess, summed up on how if they think the conceiving was successful, and less so about it being a bonding experience. Yeah. So when I see couples who are trying to conceive and they've lost that spark, I'll always try and take it back to the fact that they're making love because they are in love, and that's why they're wanting to have a baby. And promote more of the intimacy and the emotional side of things, and the pleasurable side of things as well. So if it were to be that they were timing sex around the time of ovulation, it could be that maybe they start that first day with a really nice ritual with each other, whether it's having a nice shower together, having a bath together, having a dinner, or even just having a nice conversation in bed that's intimate and it's emotional, something that just bonds them emotionally to begin with. And as well as it being about having sex around ovulation, also promoting pleasure. So talking about, we need to have sex today because, it's the start of ovulation. but then also saying, but I also want to talk about how last time when we had sex, we tried this, but it wasn't as pleasurable for me. Could we maybe try doing this position or try kissing for longer? And so investing in the pleasure just as much as the other side of things.
Do you find that people know to what they actually want, or they just have no idea, like to even know, oh, let's kiss for a little bit long? Like, do they talk about it? Do you find that they even would talk about it?
Yeah, some people do know what they like, but others do struggle. And what I find is that sometimes when people don't know what they like, it creates anxiety within them, and they feel like they have to come to the table with everything that they know, and they have to just tell their partner what to do. But that doesn't have to be the case. It can be a learning experience together. Yep. So you can say, I don't know what I like right now, or I don't know what I've liked previously, but can we just learn together? Can we just try things, and I'll let you know if that's working or if that's not working. So for people that don't know, that's what I would suggest, just learning together. But what I would do in a session is, if someone isn't sure what they like, I would talk about their previous sexual experiences, and try and pinpoint moments where they felt a lot of desire and pleasure. And that can usually be...
the couple together. Do they get funny if they're talking about previous relationships?
If it were, I might see someone on their own and talk about, sex prior to the relationship. But if it were the couple together, then I would talk about just their experiences. Yeah. But just pinpointing little moments when they had a little bit of pleasure come up. And a lot of the times it's taking it out of the kind of preconceived idea of what sex should be. So they might find that what they actually really liked was kissing for 5 minutes and then sitting back for a bit and talking for, maybe 10 minutes and just connecting, and then kissing again for a little bit more. And that made the experience really pleasurable, and they became even more aroused and had more desire. It's not necessarily about stimulating their genitals in a certain way. Yeah. So just thinking out of the box.
One thing I find, particularly for couples, is that there's always this, I think it's masculine, so the blokes are always ready to go. That's the perception. And of course, some couples come where the guy's sexual desire is like really low. And in fact, the female's quite high, and it may be because she's trying to conceive. So how do you address the issue of discordance between one person who's sexually, very excitable, whereas the other person's sort of like, oh, I don't really want to do it. I mean, because there's a lot of that, and I think particularly for blokes, when the bloke's sort of like, well, I'm not really into it at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it all starts with good communication. So talking about what's going on, what one person is feeling and what the other person is feeling. Often there can be a lot of emotion behind those conversations. The person with more desire can feel rejected. The person with less desire might feel shame about not having as much desire. So I think just openly talking about their experiences and allowing space for the other person's emotion can be a really good step. One thing that I often see, especially when two couples don't have the same level of desire, which is very often, is there's often a 0 to 100 approach to sex, which might be even more...
That's like with cars.
Yeah. How so?
Oh, you slam the foot down 100 k's an hour. Everyone wants to be there in 6 seconds.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I think that can happen even more so when people are trying to conceive, because it's all about getting to that finish, that last moment. But what that does is it creates a lot of pressure around intimacy, because it means if someone's not really feeling like it too much and their partner touches them, they will think, oh, this is going to be sex now.
This is right, yeah.
Yeah, and that adds pressure. And if they're already not feeling much desire, that's going to be a huge break and turn off their desires even more. So the idea is to have more little moments of intimacy, so that the lower desire partner can engage in something that they feel like doing, which is maybe a little bit of touching, and they know that if they don't feel like going any further, that they can. The pressure is eliminated. Yeah.
So one of the things that's probably true for a younger generation cohort is just the proliferation of porn, which is out there at the moment. And, I'd sort of like to get your take on that, but also, we often talk about how long sex should go for. I mean, obviously we get different at each time, but people get worried about that,
Yeah.
Being Italian, I know that it should go for a long period of time, but that's not true, is it? So what is typically like generally speaking, what should people be not aiming for, but, not be worried that if it's not achieving a certain standard, because we glorify this all on porn, which is so freely available now as well.
Yeah,
and particularly for young boys. Like, I'm worried about my 15-year-old son who gets exposed to this all the time, right?
Yeah.
So the perception of what might be his sexual experience in 5, 10, 15 years' time will be vastly different to what mine is, because he's been exposed to this all the time.
Yeah, and it's very accessible now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of the time, I would say, it really comes down to control. So if someone is, losing control of their ejaculation, that can be potentially a cause for concern, because, it means that they're not in control of their bodily functions. And if that is happening maybe within 1 to 2 minutes, that might be something of concern, but there's also a lot of variability with sex. So if a man is if it's happening regularly over, more than 3 months, then maybe that could be something to look into. But if it just happens every now and again, I wouldn't be concerned. But yeah, in terms of how long, anything above a minute really of constant stimulation is okay.
Okay. And so just in the take about porn as well, because I mean, obviously porn, when you watch it, you see that it goes just long periods of time. And I think people can start thinking that that's the norm.
Yeah.
But you're saying that 1 minute to 2 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
But presumably there's a lot of foreplay before that.
Yeah.
And so it's not, the whole sexual experience is a lot longer than that whole period of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm referring to in the 1 to 2 minutes is the penetrative part. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. All right. So, when we talk about then sex and there's a lot of concerns, particularly for people who are trying to conceive around erectile dysfunction. Mm-hmm. And, I think, my take on it, admittedly I'm not a sex therapist, is that a lot of it is related to the male just overthinking stuff. It's all in the brain. There's very unlikely to be an organic component. So how does a guy then overcome that sort of barrier if that's the issue?
Yeah, I guess I would be interested to know what their particular concerns are.
Yeah.
If it is that sex has become very goal-directed, that definitely adds pressure for them. So in that case, I would say really establishing more intimacy before sex starts, so that they feel safer emotionally, and sex becomes more not as much focused on what they need to do, but the experience that they're having. It can be something like that. They might have fears around what having a child could mean, and this sexual experience is what's going to lead to really big changes in their life. So I guess if a client came to me with that, I would just talk through what those fears are, maybe have their partner in so that they can have an open conversation about their expectations. But when it comes to the sexual experience and navigating erectile dysfunction, one big thing that I work with is always trying to be kind of aligned with your emotions and being more in tune with your emotions. So if you find that you are feeling stressed or anxious, if you feel stressed or anxious, meanwhile you're having a sexual experience, that's not exactly in line with how you're feeling. Yep. If you're feeling stressed or anxious, you probably need to slow down. You probably need to maybe open up to your partner and talk to them about what you're feeling, or ask for a hug or kiss. Do things that are aligned with how you feel. And then when that emotion is then processed, you'll be more ready to engage in a sexual experience.
So it seems to me that the vast majority of issues really related to a couple is the fact that they're not communicating with one another.
Definitely.
Which comes down to the whole psychology of sex and the relationship between the couple.
Yeah.
Do you find that couples, generally speaking then, if they're having, a discord in terms of their sexual experiences, that there are other issues outside in their relationship that is a concern as well?
Absolutely, yes.
What typically goes hand in hand?
Unresolved conflicts of any kind can impact sex. So if couples are not aligned with things in their broader relationship, whether it's finances, division of the household roles, anything really, that can then impact their connection. And then that the lack of connection will then impact sex. So a lot of my work is actually about restoring the connection between couples, rather than actually focusing on the sex itself. It'll be about, helping them to communicate more openly, be more emotionally vulnerable, and talk through some hard things that maybe they've been avoiding.
And people talk about, they go, oh, when we first met, the sex was different compared to years down the track when you have kids, or you've got different things. Everyone's like, oh, we want to get back to that.
Yes.
And so there's always this, and could expect that it would be, and obviously communication sort of stops.
Conflict's a big issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my algorithm on Instagram, but, I get these, how to turn on your wife, unpack the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Is there truth to that as
Absolutely.
well? Should I be unpacking the dishwasher a bit more?
Yes. If she's really needing some help, then if you can give her some acts of service, that's going to help her feel more connected to you.
Absolutely. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I think it does boil down to there's just more issues than inside the bedroom that are causing all these issues as well, aren't there?
Another one is also what I find, just going back to people at the start of when they date, there's obviously a lot of things at the start of dating that help desire. So, you're making a lot of time for each other. You're having quality time where you're learning, you're asking questions, you're going out and doing nice things, you're getting dressed up for each other. And down the track, when you have kids,
you don't get dressed up.
You don't get dressed up.
You don't go out for dinner.
You get dressed up for your friends or for your family to go to functions and things like that. But your partner gets the end of the day you, the tired you, and that's okay. That's what a relationship is. But it is also really nice and really important to keep some of that, put some of that effort in for each other and try and keep some dating alive down the track.
Yeah. Date night's important.
Date night, yes.
The other thing is, I was just going to say, is that obviously after having children, it's a big thing, especially so I would find more for the woman sometimes. But obviously that their body doesn't look like what it was. They don't feel that sexy before or now after having children.
Yeah.
So obviously that sometimes plays an emotion, even though that they will communicate. He's like, you're beautiful as you were before. And or he has this other extra layer of love for her because she's just given birth or had her, his child. But for her, it's a lot. Yep. And sometimes also just having that ability after you have children to go, I feel touched out. Don't touch me because I've had the kids on me all the time.
Yeah.
And for them to understand or to bring it back, it's not like you just,
Yeah, absolutely. No, it can be a really hard time to navigate. I think, the feeling touched out is a big one.
Yeah.
And obviously sex is a touching activity.
Mom.
Yeah.
Kids do, don't they?
Yeah.
And then the husband or the partner goes, I think the other thing, particularly for partners, and it's not, whether you're a male or a female, is that you were so used to this one person. They were yours. Their body was yours in a way, and obviously with consent. But all of a sudden now, particularly for, when you've got a breastfeeding baby, the breasts are no longer a pleasurable thing. They're a feeding tool.
Yeah, of course.
So a lot of things change in the psyche of a partner because, you've obviously succumbed now to seeing your partner in a completely different light. It does.
Even in the birth space, we're like, I don't want to look.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of that.
True.
They
don't want to look down below when the baby's head's coming out.
Yeah.
Why don't we'll break things up. We'll break things up a little bit because I think we'll get to the afterbirth stuff, which is particularly important, but maybe we'll just do the chronology. So we've talked a little bit about, preconception and fertility, but as a woman's body changes when she's pregnant, there's a lot of issues in the media recently about women who are even suffering sort of from body dysmorphia and anorexia in pregnancy because their bodies are rapidly changing.
Yeah.
And so how does the experience of becoming pregnant affect a woman's sexual desire? You know, I often say to patients, particularly women who sort of say, look, my sexual desire's dropped. I say, well, you know, before you were trying to become pregnant, you were trying to mate. If we think of ourselves as animals in the jungle, you're trying to find a mate. You know, you're sexually sort of amped up a little bit.
Yeah.
Once you're pregnant, it's like, okay, well, you can chill a little bit. Yeah, now you don't need to do that, right? But how does it affect a woman in terms of their body changing, in terms of their psychology, in terms of how they feel about sex?
Yeah, I mean, it can change in such varied ways. I think, a woman might feel like her body becomes very foreign to her because obviously there are these changes. She may never have felt this experience before. And your desire can be so much linked to how you feel about your body. So if a woman is not enjoying those changes, then it can just make her feel like she's not desirable, and therefore her need for sex will just completely go away. But in other cases, some women
have a higher.
They do have a higher
sex drive. And
yeah.
Then the partner's like, oh, I can't. She's pregnant. I can't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people can have that experience too.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is a really exciting time. There are changes happening, but it's in a different context to maybe your body changing outside of pregnancy. You know, they can feel more bonded to their partner, so that can make them desire sex more. There's hormonal changes as well, which can impact desire. So it is a very varied experience. Some women will have a lot more desire, some women won't. It's very individual.
I tell my couples that, especially towards the end, to have sex quite often. Obviously, if it's been okay by the OB, but that's one thing that I tell them often. And the wife is like, and then he's like, or he'll like, see, the doula said we can have sex. Yeah. Like, it's okay, we can have sex. But they do.
It's going, praise the doula. That's actually a very good question. Is sex safe in pregnancy?
Libra comes in a range of pads from a liner with double 2-in-1, invisible, ultra thin, maternity, and extra protect.
My number one tip for your hospital bag is Libra maternity pads.
Yes, it is safe. But I mean, obviously it has to, you know, with doctors' recommendations as well, but generally it is safe. There are some positions that can be more recommended, like having sex on your side in a spooning position to avoid lying on your belly. Also being on your hands and knees can also be another good one to avoid your belly. But in general, yes, it's safe.
Where did dimples come from?
I'm glad you said that. All right. So things can be varied during pregnancy.
Yeah.
And we know that sex is safe in pregnancy. I often get asked that question all the time, particularly from the males. But there are conditions that, of course, it's not suitable. You know, if we've got a low-lying placenta, if there's issues potentially with the cervix and we're bleeding, there might be some circumstances where us as obstetricians and midwives might suggest it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Your waters are broken towards the latter part of pregnancy. These are sort of times to avoid potentially having sex. So we now get to that postpartum period that we were talking about before. And actually, no, I'm reminded of a story. When, you know, I talked about before how the body sort of is taken over by this little human that sort of sucking the life forces, so to speak, in terms of breastfeeding, in terms of the requirements and the caring for the bubba. So the woman's changing in terms of in terms of her body and what her body is doing for her child.
Yeah.
You know, what sort of, how can a partner navigate that? Because all of a sudden this partner, you know, your partner who's had a baby is no longer yours. But what should the partner be thinking?
I mean, if the partner is maybe feeling a bit forgotten or less part of the picture, that tells me that their intimacy needs are maybe not being met. But it is a tricky scenario because if she is feeling touched out and his needs are, he's wanting more intimacy, so, like a full sexual experience might not be possible at that time. But again, going back to this idea of connecting intimately, not so much in the sexual, in the touching sense, but in the emotional sense, can be a really nice way that the two can still stay connected. Also with doing kind of low pressure physical kind of interactions, like even just sleeping naked with each other, you're getting a really nice touching experience next to each other in bed, and it might not be a full sexual experience, but it can really restore.
Do you give your couples
intimacy.
a lot of homework after a session?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It depends on each couple. But a lot of the times my homework will be around having more of those little intimacy moments. Yeah. And more open conversations. Yeah.
Because people wouldn't think of doing those things.
They wouldn't. Yeah. And that's when they feel really disconnected because those little moments aren't happening. And if those little moments are all that are really possible at that time, it's so important to keep them in the picture.
Yeah. Do people need to plan then? Like, do you need to almost put it in a schedule? What do you sort of suggest to people?
Planning sex, everyone feels kind of differently about it. I would prefer, with my clients, I wouldn't tell them to plan sex, but I would tell them to plan time to connect. So whether that's half an hour, at the end of the day or whenever, where the two of them are just going to have undivided attention for each other. And maybe it's in a space that feels a little bit more intimate, like bedtime or having, a nice dinner together. But when it can just be about the two of them. And then whatever happens from there is okay. But I wouldn't say that they have to have sex. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So, and I was interested in before in terms of, planning for intimacy. Talked about it from the male's perspective or the partner's perspective in terms of not feeling that their desires aren't met. But how does a woman who has to care for a baby actually sort of respect that and give herself time to be able to do that with their partner? Because it's you said when you're tapped out and touched out, how do you just navigate that?
Yeah. I think letting your partner in on that journey is really important so that they kind of understand what's happening, because often the partner might feel rejected and left out. And what can help them to feel less rejected is if the woman is letting them into how they feel, and just saying, I feel guilty that we haven't been able to have sex, but I'm just, I'm feeling really touched out. I'm feeling this, and just, explaining it, because sometimes the woman might feel guilt for not desiring sex, and the way that they might handle it is to kind of shut down and to not talk about it at all. And then maybe if their partner's trying to touch them, they might just roll over and be quiet, and that is what really exactly, that's where the intimacy is kind of disconnected there. So if they can just kind of try and stay on the same page and work through it together with more open communication, that can help to navigate that time.
So just generally speaking, obviously you deal with a whole range of people, heterosexual couples, same-sex couples. Do you find that there's unique differences in terms of sexual desire and sexual dysfunction amongst those groups? Or is it generally speaking a universal sort of language, so to speak, language of love?
Yeah, I would actually say it's more of a universal thing. Every couple, no matter their sex orientation, really can struggle with sexual concerns. There might be kind of a stereotype that, the men want sex more and the women want sex less. And that's, a bigger issue with heterosexual couples. But I really see it with same-sex couples as well. And I also see it with the genders reversed in heterosexual couples as well. Yeah, where the man wants it less and the woman wants it more. So
and also, often I'm surprised when I have a couple who are coming for fertility. And I say to them somewhat jokingly, how often do you have sex when they're trying to conceive? Once a week, once a month, once a year. And the couples that have it, once or twice a week, once a year. But in actual fact, there are some couples who only have sex once a year.
Yeah.
And very rarely. And they're okay with that. So where does sexual dysfunction become a problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. It becomes a problem when there's distress about it and the two people aren't happy about where their sex life is at. If two couples are having sex once a year, they're happy, they enjoy that one time, and then That's it.
It's like Sheldon from The Big Bang. He would only have sex on his birthday.
Oh, really? Yeah, perfect. Was he happy with it?
One time he banged.
Yes.
And he's happy with it. Go,
That
Sheldon.
was it, and he was happy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Amy wasn't, but that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
See?
So that would be a topic to talk about then. Yeah.
They should have come and seen you.
They should, yes.
So yeah, and it's an issue, of course, when one person is having a bit of discord. So how do people reach? I mean, how do you know, I'm saying drag your partner to see a sex therapist? Because one of the things, you know, I suppose many of us might have a scenario we'd be intimidated by seeing someone who can openly talk about sex so freely as you can, and someone who is not sexually minded is being asked by their partner to come and see a sex therapist. So if you're the person who's got a heightened desire and your partner doesn't, how do you open the discussion to say, look, I think we need to see somebody?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think firstly, bring it back to your motivation for changing things. It's most likely that you want, you care about your partner, you want your relationship to be as best as it can be, and that includes having, a sex life where you both feel satisfied. It could then be, talking about, I have seen that sex therapy can help with this kind of thing. I've noticed that you're not wanting sex as much as I am, and I'd love for us to be on the same page with that. So it is possible to go and talk to someone who can help with that kind of thing.
Do people come to you word of mouth? Do they go to see their GP and go, I need someone? Like, how would they find you?
Yeah, both. Yep.
Okay.
Google, word of mouth, GP referrals.
Okay.
Yeah. Psychologists would refer to me as well. Yeah. I think a really important part, though, just on people who aren't sexually minded and might feel a bit intimidated, sex therapy is really about going at the client's pace, because if a client were to book in with me and they felt really overwhelmed by talking about sex, if I were to go straight into all of the really confronting topics, they wouldn't come back, and then that person wouldn't be able to achieve the goals that they want. So sometimes sex won't even be spoken about for 4 or 5 sessions. Okay. It's just really about taking it at their pace until they get to a place where they feel comfortable talking about it.
So I see a lot of sex therapists talk about toys. Yeah. And I think in a way, maybe this is just a heterosexual male's perspective, but female toys seem to be, we talk about them.
Yeah.
Male toys, not so much. So how do the toys in the bedroom sort of influence the sexual relationship between a couple? Should we be scared of them? Should we be happy to use them and utilize them? Yeah. What's your take?
On feeling scared, so I think it's a really common fear with some men that, it will replace them and whatnot. I mean, when you think about what a person can do, there's the intimacy, there's the touching. You can speak to each other during sex. You can ask them to try something different and they can respond to that. There's so many things that a human can do that a toy would never be able to do. So it's definitely something that's just there as a tool to enhance things. And yeah, I think if one person expresses curiosity and the other person is maybe a little bit nervous by it.
Do you think that's a good way to start communication, for even if it's from a joking point of view, to say, and that's their way of starting to chat about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I would say let your partner in on the journey that you took to wanting to use the sex toy. I saw this thing online and they were talking about how it can be really fun. What do you think? Should we try it? Yeah.
I'm really interested about what the future holds. And I don't know if you've ever watched a movie called Ex Machina.
Oh, I think I have once, yes.
And my big concern is as robotics comes out in the future, with the lifelike robots that are out there. Yeah. And at the moment we're making companion robots. And I know that there are many, many men in America and probably in Australia that have AI avatars of girlfriends that they speak to on the telephone.
Yeah.
Do you see this as a potential disruptor to sex? Because my big concern is and I'm legitimate here, and this might be forecasting doom for the human race, but if you have a robot that does everything that you want, you talked about human connection, but if we create robots that are so in tune with us, will respond to us, are essentially a servant, for want of a better word. I mean, can you see that happening, or is it just me?
Yeah. No, I can see it happening. I mean, I already see it happening with porn, really. A lot of people who might feel anxiety around real life sexual experiences might use porn as a way to kind of cope with that. And it's nice that I guess that there's a tool to help cope with that, but it means that they don't really mobilize and try and overcome that anxiety. They just might sit in the comfort of using porn. So I already see it with something like porn, which is nowhere near an experience of something like an AI bot. Is that what they're called?
They're AI bots, but I'm actually talking about robots.
Yeah, robots. Yeah.
Like when robots come out, and you can have a robot do everything and anything. I mean, I really get worried about how we as humans will connect with one another when this sort of comes out in the future, which it will.
Yeah.
It's kind of
no doubt it will.
scary.
It is scary. It scares me. I think it is a concern. It would make people a lot more complacent with not putting themselves out there, taking themselves out of their comfort zone. I mean, we even see it now with dating apps.
Yeah.
People are kind of reverting to dating apps rather than having real life experiences of meeting one another.
I love your take on dating apps because I just think dating apps are like, it's a sense. I mean, obviously we've had to transition to that because people maybe are a little bit fearful of just putting it out there when you go to a bar or whatever.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a lot of, pressure, I think, on I would have thought females more than males in terms of being sexually overt on these platforms. Do you think that's true, or is that just me?
That males are more open.
Well, males are just using it as basically a way to pick up chicks.
Yeah. It's definitely a thing. I mean, a lot of people are on there to find real connections and relationships, but there can be, a lot of men on there that are just kind of sexualizing women, and it becomes just a tool to get sex.
So how does a woman protect herself in that regard then?
It's a good question. I've actually been promoting this idea recently of when you are meeting someone, even if it's within the first few chats that you're having, ask them what they're looking for and say what you're looking for. If you're looking for something that is more serious, lay that out in a very early conversation. And I've noticed that on dating apps, it is a little more normal to have that conversation pretty early on.
Yeah.
Gone are the days that you would just meet someone at a bar.
Yeah.
No one does that anymore.
I know, it's sad.
And then there was this phase that you would buy, like you would have these rings sent in the mail. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
And you'd go to the bar and then you would know that this person was on a dating app, so then they're available. And I was like,
that's like putting a pineapple in the trolley, isn't it? Isn't there something like that? Or a banana?
I've heard of that one.
Oh, no, there's something going around. We'll have to put it in the show notes. But I think if you go around the supermarket with something in the top of the basket of the trolley, you're available. And then you can chat to them.
I like that.
Really?
Do you like that?
Yeah. Better than dating apps.
Do you also find that in, like, obviously, I find that girlfriends and things that are single and then on that dating app, they go for that one and they're like, forget it. That didn't go anywhere, or it's harder to find a companion or a partner these days than it was, even 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean...
It's not like being in the San Remo ballroom for our parents back in the 1950s. Yeah.
That's where my parents met, actually.
See, I told you. That's what used to happen.
So
Yeah.
I know. Gone are those days.
Yeah.
And we lead very disconnected lives now. People work from home a lot more. People are online. So it's just harder to meet people.
Social. So one thing that thank you for coming on, but if people had to find you or tell us about your socials, tell us how we would find you.
Yeah, so you can find me at mianoclinicalsexology.com.au.
Yeah.
And my Instagram handle is Laura Miano Sexology.
Okay.
How do you spell Miano? Because a lot of people out there are going to go Miano.
Miano. It's Miano.
Oh, beautiful. And Laura
Miano.
Laura.
Sì, grazie.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
Doula Doula and The Doc, hosted by Vanessa Salerno at Perth.
Can we just put in the bloopers at the end?